pleasure to be here. As Daniel said, I'm lucky enough to be at Scripps Translational Science Institute. That was started a little bit over 10 years ago, actually 11 years ago now, by Eric Topol, really all around what then was individualized medicine and now precision medicine. At the time, precision medicine really focused on genomics, but I want to tonight kind of emphasize the importance of what digital technology can bring and how critical it is to actually precision medicine and the kind of medicine that we really need to move clinical practice to in the future. These are I'm not going to really be talking about any of these tonight, but in particular I want to point out that Scripps, our digital medicine group, was initiated thanks to support from the Qualcomm Foundation, who's been extraordinarily supportive of us. So what exactly is precision medicine? So too often I'll read, somebody will say, and even put blatantly, that precision medicine equals genomics medicine, and it doesn't. The NIH defines it in a very typical NIH way, an emerging approach, disease treatment and prevention that takes into account individual variability in genes, environment, and lifestyle for each person. Yes, that's true. But really, it comes down to understanding what makes all of us unique. Why is one patient, one individual that we prefer not to become a patient, so different than another one? Why does this one respond to this drug, this one respond to this lifestyle? And you know, we all get very generic kind of recommendations around lifestyle. You're supposed to walk 10,000 steps. Really, every single one of us, 10,000 steps? We're supposed to eat a limited amount of carbohydrates and fats and proteins, but we know there are people who can eat differently and not gain weight and be different. So we're all individual, and we just don't understand that. But this concept of precision medicine, or treating us as an individual and trying to best, is not old. In fact, it's not new. It's as old as medicine itself. And this is Hippocrates saying it's far more important to know what person the disease has than what disease the person has. But in reality, a lot of what we do today in healthcare, and Jordan mentioned it, where it's really illness care and sickness care, is around not keeping somebody healthy, but instead focus on being able to diagnose somebody quickly and treat somebody quickly and putting them in a box of what that disease is rather than understanding the individual completely. So I'd love to give you a great example of what precision medicine is currently in practice, of what we think of as maybe more mainstream medicine, but this is a great example, and I think what we can strive for and other things, and that's just eyeglasses or contact lenses. I mean, that's really precise. When you think about it, you know, that for those of you wearing contacts, those who are wearing glasses, I would suspect it's going to be really difficult for you to share with the person next to you what the same glasses and have the same effect with that. And that's because we know exactly, for the most part, what affects vision, what affects most of us in vision problems, and we can adjust for that, we can measure that, we can end up looking at every aspect of the eye and eventually get a prescription that's very specific to you. And beyond just that medical treatment, then you can go beyond that and say, okay, what fits into your lifestyle? What of this treatment, what is best for you that's unique about you, the way you live your life, whether it's glasses, whether it's contacts, whether it's sporting glasses, whether it's sunglasses, all of that. And that's what we should be able to do in almost every aspect of medicine. But you look at something, and I'm going to focus on the single biggest risk factor for morbidity and mortality worldwide, and that's high blood pressure, which is a super boring diagnosis, right? We've been able to measure high blood pressure for 120 years, more than 120 years. We've got treatments that are today less than pennies a day that we've had available for over 70 years. And it is still today the single greatest contributor to early death and morbidity worldwide. So over 1 billion individuals globally, of people who have high blood pressure, only 13% are actually adequately treated for that high blood pressure. That is a failed system of care. That's not it's not because we don't have the technology to measure it. It's not because we don't have the medications or the lifestyle knowledge to treat it. It's just we can't apply that. And a lot of that is because what we call high blood pressure right now is very different. But we don't, so 98% of individuals with high blood pressure have essential hypertension. Well, there's probably actually dozens of different reasons for high blood pressure and pathophysiological difference, but this is the current algorithm of how you treat that. Now, I don't think anybody goes to medical school, does residency, does fellowships for what could be up to 15 years to follow an algorithm. But this is the best we have, and I'll say in the United States, high blood pressure is the single most common diagnosis to see a primary care doctor. And all that we have to do to manage high blood pressure, all the best guidance of precise measurement of high blood pressure involves your age, whether you have diabetes, whether you have chronic kidney disease, and on the third tier, whether you are black or not. And that's as well refined as we can do with hypertension management right now, even though that's the #1 risk factor for early death and morbidity worldwide. Another example of how imprecise medicine is now is that even though we've got phenomenal therapies and great biologicals that are making a great difference, if you look at, this is a nice paper by Nick Shork when he was at STSI, that for every person that benefits from the top 10 highest grossing drugs in the US, it fails to improve 3 to 24 people. So in sum, only one out of every 25 people who get a drug, one of the top 10 selling drugs in the country, will benefit from it. The other 24 get no benefit and then are more likely to have a side effect than an actual benefit for it. But we don't know how to identify who that person is who's going to benefit and who doesn't. So to really understand that, we truly, at a deeper level than we can ever imagine, have to understand what makes us all unique. And this is all the players starting at 12 o'clock. So your environment, your built environment. Not all of us are lucky enough to live in areas where parks and areas we can be active and our kids can go to playgrounds and play around. What food we're exposed to, whether we live in food deserts and have access, the only access to food we have is frankly at convenience stores or gas stations, or whether we have a robust supply of fruits and vegetables, the actual environment we live in, what's the temperature fluctuations, sunlight fluctuations a year, what kind of health care we're exposed to, what our work environment is, what our family environment is, and then I'm going to skip over then our microbiome and our genomics. And really understanding all of that and understanding the uniqueness of all of that is what we need to understand what makes us unique. And then when the wearable sensors, and it's great to follow Leslie, and she did a great job talking about a lot of the sensors and a lot of the capabilities and what they can do. And what that tells us is, what those can tell us is how do we all respond to different environments? How are we all different in measurable ways with these sensors? And what enables that is not the sensor itself, but really the explosion in this computers we all have in our pockets here, because all those sensors are linked to the computers. And the capabilities we have today compared to 20 years ago when I was a cardiology fellow, it's just remarkable, and we don't take advantage of that. And this just shows how it's kind of exploded, where today 70% of all Americans have a smartphone, and so because of that have connectivity to all the information, all the capabilities, a lot of the things that Leslie showed you of ways we can communicate with patients using virtual assistants and avatars. And worldwide, it's growing at the same rate with a lot of disparities in different countries, but this is going to give us, it's this explosion of connectivity and computational power that's going to enable this sensor technology, enable us to measure things we've never been able to measure before. We already use our smartphones. They've become an incredibly common part of our lives, and the internet access that they bring allows us to incorporate them in our medical care. So the average iPhone user says unlocks the device 80 times a day, so essentially every 11 minutes. There was actually an article in Nature today that said Google announced that the average smartphone user will activate their smartphone 1 million times a year. So over 60,000 health-related Google searches occur every minute. So those are health-related Google searches. 1 in every 20 Google searches is in fact health-related. And 1 out of every 100, or 1% of all Google searches, are actually related to diagnosing a health problem. So people are already turning to their phone as a tool to help them in their health care, and we just haven't provided the infrastructure yet to do that. And the precision medicine focus can do that using the sensors, and then using the sensors and the information sent to the smartphone, digested, and that information returned back to individuals. And when you look at how different that is, So when we try to understand the phenotypes, how are we all different? How am I different than any one of you? And how are you different than the person next to you? Those are all can be described as phenotypes. And the best ways we understand that now different. So do you have high blood pressure? Do you not? Well, for blood pressure, you go to a doctor's office, you sit maybe for 5 minutes, maybe not. Have you rest, relax, deep breathe, and measure your blood pressure. What does that have to do with your blood pressure while you're driving in traffic and you're late for a flight or you're up on a stage and giving a talk? We have no idea. We have no idea how that relates. And then if we want to know something about, well, how well do you sleep? How does your sleep differ than somebody else's sleep? Almost all that information is based on surveys. So we have this really limited understanding of a lot of areas of what is normal. Sensors, and Leslie showed a lot, this is a figure that just shows that they're not limited to vital signs and things we're used to. The incredible ecosystem of developers building just remarkable tools that we can measure virtually anything in the future. So everything we have today is just really beginning to scratch the surface. But these sensors will allow us to unobtrusively and continuously monitor a wide range of these ever-expanding characteristics about what makes us unique. They'll give us real-world information. As I mentioned, it'll tell us what our blood pressure is when we're stressed. And I can tell you, once we start being able to measure that, no one will be able to tell you if that's normal. Maybe when you are stuck in traffic and late for a flight, your blood pressure is okay when it's 180 over 120, or maybe you're a lot better off if it's 120 over 80. We don't know that, and we have to figure that out. And then finally, and most importantly, right now in medicine, we typically compare ourselves to a population normal. But instead, with continuous sensor technology, we'll be able to compare ourselves, to when we were well the day before, the week before, the month before, and we'll be able to notice small changes in that. And let me give you an example of that and how far behind we are. So when you look at all these things that all of us use every day or more often in flying, all of our routine life, we have sensors looking for any early perturbations in its function, right? So in airplanes, the Airbus has over 6,000 sensors, 2.5 terabytes of data a day. I think that's more than what Fitbit collects from all of its users every day. Cars have over 30 sensors, 50 microprocessors. Humans, we have nothing. But why is it important that we continuously monitor? And think to yourself, what's your normal body temperature? Everybody 98.6, what we think of? Guarantee almost all of you are wrong. But we don't know that, right? We think 98.6 is it. This is the biggest study that's looked at temperatures, and again, just snapshot temperatures of normal individuals. And you'll see that half of individuals fall outside of less than 94.6 and greater than 99. As your normal temperature. So when somebody's normal is 94 and they come in and have a temperature of 99, the doctor's office is going to say, you're fine, you don't have a fever. Well, they do. They have a big fever, but we don't know because we don't know what somebody's normal is. And it's the same when you look at heart rate. What's all of your resting heart rates? Do you know what changes it and what affects it? So these are some data from a collaboration we have with Fitbit to look at 100,000 of their users, where we have their sleep and their heart rate data, and this is just the distribution in men and women of what their resting heart rate is. So it's a wide range, so obviously there's not a population, you can't apply a population normal to you. And why might that be important? Well, this is a small N-of-1 study that Mike Schneider did from Stanford looking at what ended up being a diagnosis of Lyme disease in him that was not known or suspected. And what he noticed is his heart rate was creeping up every time he would feel poorly. And then it would go back down to normal in a very typical Lyme disease pattern. And he was also tracked this with C-reactive protein and eventually had the diagnosis. So if you think about it, if we had the knowledge, it's possible that subtle changes in our heart rate could be able to demonstrate for us when we have early signs of a flu, when we have any kind of assault or change in our physiological status. And in fact, there's been several papers, a recent one to follow up on this, that just changes in our resting heart rate in women can identify fertility status. And then most recently, this investigators followed up and showed the earliest signs of pregnancy of just subtle changes in your resting heart rate. So that's this untapped information that the only time we get our heart rate is maybe when we go to the doctor's office, and obviously for people in this room, we get it more often, but we don't know what to do with it. And we need to better understand that, to more precisely obviously identify how you're different from the day before that, and if you're healthy and doing well. And this is, even though I'm showing the Samsung SIM band here, on the 13 measures on the right-hand side are all different physiological measurements that different wrist-worn devices are able to measure right now. Maybe not adequately enough to be FDA approved, but all working on that. So you can imagine right now to measure even half of these, I would need for you to be in an intensive care unit. But to have a watch that measures, besides activity, pulse, and sleep stages, your blood pressure continuously, your cardiac output, an ECG, your stress level, your respiratory rate, your oxygen rate, your carbon dioxide levels, your skin temperature, your hydration status, and glucose. Maybe not glucose well enough now to treat diabetes and dose insulin, but well enough to tell you how your glucose level responds after a breakfast of pancakes compared to a breakfast of oatmeal. So all of this leads into an exciting project that Scripps is very proud to be part of, and it's really the most ambitious, largest healthcare-related research project ever undertaken. It's now called the All of Us program. It was initiated under President Obama as a precision medicine initiative. He actually proposed this initially as a senator in 2007, is incredibly knowledgeable about it, but it, as he says, gives us one of the greatest opportunities of all for new medical breakthroughs that we've ever seen. And it's really true. It's not hyperbole. It's going to take some years to do that, but we're going to achieve that. It's called, as I mentioned, it's the All of Us program. It's just kicking off very below the radar in the beta phase and trying out, but it's individuals across the country really focused on diversity. Overall, 1 million individuals are going to be enrolled in this project. These are 1 million individuals who are going to get blood samples for genomics. They're going to link their electronic health record to the database. They're going to fill out probably more surveys than they would like, and they're going to have wearable sensors. And we don't know what wearable sensors. We just announced a partnership with Fitbit to do a pilot study, but that's just to really understand how to get people to wear it, how do we collect the data. We're aiming much higher as all of these, Fitbit, Apple, others, everybody develops better and better technologies will get better. So it's a partnership. It isn't like a research study where you just absorb all the data from the participants and say, thank you very much. We're giving it back because we want this to be a model for the future of healthcare where there's this two-way exchange of information in real time. We also want to create this large data set, the world's largest data set. And finally, and most importantly to everybody in here, and hopefully everybody out there, unlike most NIH-sponsored studies or a lot of studies, the data doesn't belong to us, doesn't belong to the people who are working on making it happen. It belongs to everybody. So that means the data set can be analyzed by anybody in this room, anybody outside this room, anybody who has enough interest to go through and jump through the hoops that are going to be necessary to show that you have the right security and privacy training and stuff to do that. Again, that's going to take time, but this is going to have the biggest impact on clinical care than any other research program ever could. We have a lot to learn. You'll be hearing a lot more about it in the future. And any chance you have to support it or join it, I highly recommend it. So thank you very much.
This All of Us program is pretty incredible. It's bringing a lot of convergences together. Is this All of Us just in the US, or could it be connected to a global community of researchers?
So the goal is to connect it. All of the 1 million individuals have to be living in the US. They don't have to be US citizens, but have to live here. But like the UK Biobank that has 500,000 individuals, South Korea is starting a similar precision medicine initiative, and there are several others. And we're trying to, the goal is to align the data sets so they can be combined.
And the big vision maybe in a few years, we'll be able to connect all these data sets, and just in time, you're seeing a patient, you're going to have the best available data from all around the world.
Well, that's the way we actually should. You know, keep us up to date on anything. There was a great article in New England Journal a week or two ago that medicine has gotten too complicated for the human mind, and that's really true. And so once we embrace that and start bringing in that ability to collect all that information and provide clinical decision support, that will happen.
Great. Fantastic work. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks.